25 years ago this Shabbat, my very good friend Charlie Savinor delivered his senior sermon at JTS. It still resonates with me. Charlie began by sharing a memory when he was a child of a winter snowstorm so severe that power lines and other essential services went down in the greater Boston area. School and work were closed for 3 weeks. Charlie's father, Joseph, who owned a wine and cheese business, decided to go to work. He trekked through the snow and blizzard conditions in order to get there. 5 days later, the longest Charlie had ever been apart from his dad, Joseph returns home by train and greets his family, kissing and hugging them. "I will always remember," Charlie recalls, "how he picked me up and hugged me. You would have thought that we hadn't seen each other in years." In this morning's Torah reading, Moses returns home from work. According to the Midrashic work Sefer Olam, Moses had been away and had not seen his wife Zipporah or his children Gershon and Eliezer in more than a year. The negotiations to release the Israelites from Egypt, as we know, were intense and ultimately successful. Our parsha begins with Moshe's dramatic return. V'yavo Yitro choten Moshe uvanav v'ishto el Moshe. Yitro, Moses' father-in-law, brought Moses' son and wife with him into the wilderness. Vayomer el Moshe ani chotencha Yitro ba'elecha v'ishtecha u'shnei vaneha ima. He sent word to Moses, "I, your father-in-law Yitro, am coming to you with your wife and her 2 sons." Vayetze Moshe likrat chotno v'yishtachu v'yishak lo v'yishalu ish l're'ehu l'shalom v'yavo oleha. Moses went out to meet his father-in-law. He bowed low and kissed him. Each asked after the other's welfare, and then they went into the tent. Now, I'm someone who used to travel a lot for work. When I was at USCJ, I was on the road probably 30% of the time. What's surprising here is that when Moses comes home from work after a year away, he greets his father-in-law, he hugs his father-in-law, he kisses his father-in-law. But what happens to his wife and to his children? Where is his hug and kiss for Zipporah? Where is his hug and his kiss, his greeting for Gershon and Eliezer? Ibn Ezra, a Spanish commentator from the 11th century, notes Moses' missing hug and explains, Ba'avor kavod Yitro v'chochmato, that Moshe's meeting of Yitro in this way was honorific of his wisdom. In other words, Moses greets Yitro not because he is his father-in-law, but because Yitro is his peer, a leader of his people. According to Ibn Ezra, then, Moses simply didn't greet his wife and kids because that wasn't the custom. My friend Charlie uses this text to make a point about leadership and family. Sometimes those in leadership positions can be workaholics, and their families suffer as the leader serves all the people around them except for those right in front of them, their own mishpacha. The Torah and Jewish tradition seems to make this point abundantly clear in that Gershon and Eliezer, except for an obscure reference in later texts, are virtually never heard from again. Aaron and his sons, we know who they are. Even Korach and his sons, we know them, their lines, their descendants. They continue to play an important leadership role in our people. But not Moses and his sons. The burden of leadership without family balance can be severe. I was reminded of Charlie's sermon a couple of weeks ago, and I want to look at it in a slightly different way. I was reminded of Charlie's message over a family Zoom. Once a week since the pandemic began, my family, like many families, we have a family Zoom My family's all over the world. We started it specifically because Ziva is in Israel, and my father and my sisters and I and my other sister and my other daughters and the entire mishpacha wanted to make sure that she was connected and she wasn't feeling so isolated. Ziva made Aliyah, as you know, as a young single adult. The pandemic has been especially challenging for her. She's halfway around the world. She went without family, without a job, looking to establish herself in a new community, to establish herself in the future of the Jewish state. Ziva, during all of this, has essentially been isolated. All things considered, she's doing amazingly well. She found a job, she found a community, and she's managing her anxiety and the stress as well as anyone could possibly expect of her. A couple of weeks ago, on that particular Zoom, that day, when we asked her how she was, she said, "Abba, I'm doing okay. I just want a hug." You see, it's been more than a year since we've seen her. It's been more than a year since we've been able to physically hug her, to touch her. All Jody and I wanted to do at that moment was reach through the computer and give her a hug. And it dawned on me, all of us, we are all missing so many hugs. Some of us are separated by distance, but all of us are separated as a result of this virus. My heart aches for families like mine, for those of us not able to meet their new grandchildren, or those of us who only see them from the end of the driveway. Worse are those members of our community who've had to bear the pain of a loved one dying without family support in hospitals or long-term care facilities, and Shiva, as we know, with the absence of extended family and physical community, and the hugs they give and we receive, they diminish our ability to heal. Research shows that hugs are essential to our well-being. In the early 1900s England, for example, there was a famous study of an orphanage, a so-called fancy orphanage with pristine conditions. Children were dying at a rate significantly higher than the impoverished orphanage on the other side of town. No one could figure out why that was so they began to look into it. Other than the state of the facility itself, the only difference between these orphanages was touch. In the fancy orphanage, the children were not held, while in the impoverished orphanage, they were frequently held. Without touch, these researchers concluded, children simply failed to thrive. When we touch, our bodies release oxytocin, a neurochemical that makes us feel well and warm all over. That's why a cuddle feels so good. Not only that, but research shows that it also speeds the healing of wounds and helps us to heal when we have pain or grief. That's why that big bear hug to someone in pain or when we need it helps our bodies to shut down the memories of those painful stimulus and makes us feel better almost instantaneously. In other words, touch, a hug, is crucial. It's as fundamental to life as is food, as is the air we breathe. This truth is critically acknowledged during this pandemic, in that public health provides an exception to the stay-at-home order for those adults living alone, so that they may be able to join other people, another family, during the pandemic, and not be so totally isolated from others. Nurses know this as well. I recently learned that one of the reasons for nurse burnout is because day after day, they are the ones that are standing in for family members that can't be present as their loved ones are in the hospital, holding hands and caressing the brow of dying patients as their families look on through Facebook or Zoom. The bottom line is, people need people, and people need hugs. So what are we to do? What are we to do at a moment in which public health and the overall well-being of our community keeps us apart, where hugs are just not possible for most of us? For starters, we have to remain resilient and remember, though time seems to be dragging on, it will get better. There will be vaccines, and we will emerge from this moment. And when it passes, we will remember how to hug, just as we never forget how to breathe. And we have to lean into other ways to show those we love that we love them. For our family, that's always been the blessing of our children every Thursday or Friday, no matter where they are in the world. We literally ask them to put their hands on their heads as Jody and I recite the parental blessings of our children. You know what those ways are for you and yours. It may be a text with funny emojis. It may be frequent Zoom calls, a walk, driveway visits, flowers, chocolates, a watch party. Did I say chocolates? Or maybe, here's a novel idea, a handwritten letter. You know what those you love will appreciate it. We may be living in a moment in which physical hugging is not possible. But as my friend Charlie taught 25 years ago through his senior sermon on Moses' missing hug, hugs come in many shapes and sizes. Physical hugs may take the form of an embrace, but verbal hugs are expressed through words of affirmation and appreciation, and silent hugs occur when we listen. We always live in moments in which we can give and receive verbal and silent hugs. And for now, they will just have to do.